Alright, team, so we're back, of course, to talk about some Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We are talking about the upcoming PlayStation Showcase. I don't know if there's like rumblings online about this event or something, but I just seen like several people talking about it the last day or so. I've also been seeing this image kind of making the rounds on like social media and like gaming articles using it and stuff, and I don't think it's an official image just because Sony themselves have not announced an upcoming PlayStation Showcase, but it's kind of like an all but confirmed situation with like Jeff Grubb talking about it and stuff, because he was right on the state of play, so I'm assuming he's going to be right on this PlayStation Showcase, right? And according to him, this is meant to be like the biggest showcase they've ever done, but also it's supposed to be setting up the second phase of the PS5, and obviously we have a ton of badass exclusive games coming out in the near future. Now, the conversation of the upcoming PlayStation Showcase kind of reigniting, it seems. We're back on the train of people talking about how it's like impossible. It can never be done. They can't possibly show Rebirth before 16 releases, despite the fact that I'm showing you a trailer in the background right now that dropped more than a year before 16 was going to drop. A lot of this has just never really made sense, especially since summer of last year. But I mean, before 16's ever even dropped or been in our hands, we've been shown both Rebirth and also Kingdom Hearts 4. People seem to ignore that shit. So we've had two massive games, Kingdom Hearts 4 and Rebirth, being shown during 16's marketing cycle, right? Like, people have this logic people have of, me no think big game can be shown till other big game come out. Like, it's just never made sense. It's fucking caveman brain shit. But let's go back to before Rebirth was even shown, right? The logic has always been pretty much since September of 2020, whenever Final Fantasy XVI was first shown with the Awakening trailer, that they're never going to show Remake Part 2 until 16 releases, right? That's been the logic since 2020. And obviously it took a little while, but we were never going to see Remake Part 2 until a few years after Remake, right? People were just impatient and wanted to see it. It was always going to take 2+ years before we ever got to even look at the next game. And prior to the FF7 livestream we got summer of last year, June 16th, people's logic was they're not going to show Remake Part 2, even though this is a dedicated FF7 livestream, they're not going to show it because 16. Like, that was the logic. But let's also kind of set the scene here, right? They showed us Remake Part 2, but they gave us a title, right? FF7 Rebirth. They also announced that the Remake project itself was going to be a trilogy. They also gave us a goddamn trailer for Remake Part 2. But on top of all that, that trailer also gave us a release window. All this happening somehow magically during FF16's marketing cycle, right? And for basing this off of the trailers for 16, it was literally right in the middle of them, because we have 4 trailers, and Rebirth was shown 2 weeks after the Dominance trailer, which was the second trailer. And we can even put aside like the Final Fantasy game comparison, like Marvel's Avengers, which was a flop, but is meant to be this massive game. It lost like Square Enix like $100+ million, right? It had a huge budget. Like, that game was being marketed alongside Remake, right? Its official reveal trailer came out E3 2019, which is the same event where Remake itself got like a 20+ minute showcase. And to kind of further add to this discussion, because Remake was delayed to April of 2020, that pushed it into Square Enix's next fiscal year, which begins on April 1st of every year. And that made it to where Remake and Marvel's Avengers came out during the same fiscal year. So you had 2 massive games, or what are supposed to be 2 massive games, dropping in the same fiscal year, which people seem to think is completely impossible. Despite the fact that we're seeing that right now as long as Rebirth doesn't get delayed, right? It has a this window release date, so it's anywhere from December of this year to March of next year, which is the end of Square Enix's fiscal year. Like, we might have 16 and 7 Rebirth dropping in the same fiscal year, which people seem to think is impossible despite it potentially happening right now before our eyes. And you could argue when it comes to Marvel's Avengers and 7 Remake that those are different studios, so maybe that's why this or that happened. But same thing with, Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy is not made by the same like studio every time, right? Like, Creative Business Unit 3 is making Final Fantasy 16, and Creative Business Unit 1 is doing the Remake project. They're all under Square Enix, but it's still completely different dev teams. But even put aside these Square Enix related stuff, like the upcoming event is a PlayStation Showcase, right? It's a Sony event to show off the upcoming games for the PlayStation 5 to try to make you buy a PS5. And while 16 does fall under that category, by the time this event is happening, we're damn near to the launch of 16, right? This event could be happening anytime within May or maybe early June, and obviously 16 is dropping June 22nd. It's why a lot of people expect 16 to also be at this event, and potentially if it's going to be there, that would be a launch trailer. And if we're doing a launch trailer for the game, the marketing's more or less done in the grand scheme of things, right? We're gearing up for the actual launch of the game at that point. You got to look to the future, in the future 7 Rebirth. And depending on exactly when this event's going to be happening, let's say for the sake of this conversation here, we're going to say this event's happening early June. We're at that point exactly 6 months, half a year from the release of Rebirth at the absolute earliest, which is December of this year. And that's not really enough time to market like a massive game that's coming out. Even at the absolute latest, it might come out like March of next year, March 2024. That's still only 9 months to market the game. And that's barely enough. That's almost exactly what we got roughly with Remake, right? Remake was revealed May of 2019, but the actual E3 event was when you kind of get the real actual official trailer and a big showcase. That was obviously June of 2019, and the game came out, or supposed to come out March of 2020, got delayed to April, right? And of course, that June to March window is a 9-month period, but obviously Remake got delayed to April, so that made it like a 10-month marketing period technically. And it's almost like Rebirth might be on the same trajectory as what Remake was, right? Because we're almost potentially going to see the exact same thing. Because I doubt that we're going to get the December release date. I mean, it could happen, but I just don't super feel like that's going to happen, because every time another month passes, that's like less time to market the game. And as it stands right now, as I'm talking to you guys currently, we are less than a year from release for FF7 Rebirth, barring any delays to the game, of course, because the earliest it can come out is December, the latest can come out is next March, and we are a third of the way through April, more or less. Kind of the main point of this discussion is the marketing for Rebirth. That's something people seem to be ignoring. There's people out there who think that we're not even going to see Rebirth until like fall of this year, which makes no sense when there's a fucking winter release window. Like, you think they're going to market the game for like 3 to 4 months and then we're going to get it? Like, no, dude. Like, gotta have some time to market the game. And what better time than the end of the marketing cycle for 16? That just makes sense. So this PlayStation Showcase, I think, is a perfectly reasonable event to look forward to. We've definitely looked at like a bunch of events over the last couple of years for Remake Part 2, and more recently, of course, for FF7 Rebirth. And we've always looked at it from the perspective of it's possible, right? It's always possible that it could be there. It may be there. It might not be there. But I think if there's one event where I could put all my eggs in one basket, we'll use that's an Easter reference. That makes a little bit of sense, I guess, now, huh? But if there's one event that we can look forward to that I could say with like 90-something% certainty that we're going to have something for Rebirth there, it's got to be this showcase, right? It's supposed to be the biggest PlayStation showcase ever. It's supposed to set up the future of the PS5, the second phase of the PS5. And by the time this event's happening, we're more or less at the end of the marketing for 16, and we got to start up the marketing for 7 Rebirth. Like, it all just makes sense. It also will be happening around the same time that they really started the marketing for fucking Remake back in 2019. Like, everything points in the direction of there being something for Rebirth. Now, as we always talk about when we discuss these topics, could we get burned again by Square Enix? You're goddamn right. It's Square Enix, of course. We could get fucked, and they might not show us anything. Maybe they push fucking Rebirth to the end of 2024 for all we know. Like, it could all happen. It's all possible, right? But until that happens, or we have something official from Square Enix themselves, I think it's perfectly acceptable to have a level of hype for this event, specifically for FF7 Rebirth. I would almost want to say that it's... guarantee is not the right word, because you can't guarantee anything without any sort of official statement or whatever the fuck. But I just think that there's a very, very high probability, given what the showcase is supposed to be, that they'd want to show Rebirth. And obviously, because this is a PlayStation exclusive game, there's some level of that, like, marketing belongs to Sony, right? Obviously, I don't know the ins and outs of exactly how that works, but to some degree, if Sony were to come to Square Enix and say, hey, we need a trailer for your upcoming game for our platform that has exclusive rights on our platform, like, Square Enix would have to oblige to some level, right? I would think because of the exclusivity deal they have going on with the Remake project, and it really seems like the Final Fantasy series itself with Sony, that they would have some level of say in the marketing of the game, right? And what better place to show off Rebirth on a massive platform than the upcoming PlayStation Showcase that's meant to show off the future of the PS5. And as we do, that's more or less the video. Look, a lot of what we talked about in this video, we've kind of talked about before here and there throughout other videos. But I've seen people talk about this again because of like the debate or the discussion again of the upcoming PlayStation Showcase, and people saying that it's like impossible that they would ever show this game, despite it already having a trailer. And I just wanted to talk about it again, but kind of in a different way. That's the video, my dudes. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, dashingdavidbusiness. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain, or leave it like Cobain.